All right, so I'll call the school board meeting into session, into order at this time. I do have one announcement to make. The construction program owner's representative business, item 11.3, program number 5, task order number 20, GMP for Eglin Elementary School Building 3, roofing replacement project, the Faithful and Gould validation has been received. At this time, I need a motion to approve the school board agenda.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify. The vote is 5-0. Thank you. All right, at this time, Superintendent, we have some recognitions, and this will be the recognition of the Ruckle Middle School dance team, state champions in the middle school hip hop division at the Florida Dance Championships.
Thank you. Is Mr. Whitney here? Is our coach here? Yes, there she is. Come on up. You teach math too, don't you? I was in your room watching you teach math, and you were getting it done, young lady. Woo, impressive. Melissa, Mrs. Thrush, our board member, will call the names. And Ms. Thrush, would you read that, please?
In honor of Ruckle Middle School, Ruckle Rockettes Dance Team, 2018 State Champions, Middle School Hip Hop Division. Congratulations to Ruckle Middle School Dance Team members, London Taylor, Caroline Swanick, Parker Lee, Faith Hall, Libby Marion, Leah Peoples, Emma Bailey, Bailey Tate, Elizabeth McMahon, Kinley Lafitte, Autumn Eller Olson, and Anna Beth Otteson. Assistant Coach Jill Kursich and Head Coach Kendall Cragen and Principal Paul Wiggin on your outstanding accomplishment. Respectfully presented by Superintendent Mary Beth Jackson and members of the Okaloosa County School Board on this day, the 12th day of March 2018. Congratulations.
Thanks, ladies, as we call your name, or gentlemen, whichever, as we call your name, would you please come forward and just make a line across here? We want to get some pictures today. Is your assistant coach here? She is. Would she come? Would she join us? Hello.
Hi, how are you?
All right.
Anna Beth Otteson. Autumn Eller Olson. Kinley Lafitte. Elizabeth McMahon. Bailey Tate. Emma Bailey.
You haven't seen these folks perform. I saw them perform not too long ago at a pep rally. Incredible. I didn't know your body could move that way. They were amazing.
Leah Peoples.
No. I can do young man.
Oh.
Libby Marion.
How's your costumes?
Faith Hall.
And I remember you as a tiny baby coming up to school with your mama. She would bring you up there for me to see it. Grown up.
Parker Lee. Caroline Swanick. And London Taylor.
Let's give these lovely young ladies a yeah, come on. You kind of go on the little ones get in front. Little ones get in front. I can be good job. See, when you're famous dancers, that's how it'll be. Somebody taking a picture all the time. You're amazing. Thank you.
All right, board members, we'll do our customary 2-minute recess to allow folks, if they wish to depart, or they're welcome to stay. We'll recess for just 2 minutes.
You're so little. But let me tell you something.
All right, board members, I'm going to go ahead and call us back into session now, and we're moving through the agenda. And we've covered item 3 on recognitions, and we have no visitors or public comment tonight. Is that correct, Ms. Evans? All right, very good. I was going to call him up in just a few minutes. Okay. All right. Then we have no Section 6 administrative or personnel appointments. On Section 7, committee and staff reports, of course, we had those at our lengthy workshop this past Thursday. But at this time, I would like to call forward Mr. Kelly and his guest, as they have some information to share with us. This is Ms. Tracy Duar, I believe. All right.
And she is the deputy wing commander of Hurlburt. And obviously we're standing here because 24 hours a day, the happy news was the legislature voted to give us the $1 million for the buses at Florosa. This was a very difficult session, as I think everybody's aware, but now it goes to the governor for his signature. But I did want to, before I introduce Ms. Dewar, give our whole delegation really pulled together, but I have to truly recognize Senator Doug Broxson and Representative Mel Ponder, who really worked hard with us in both the Senate and the House. And Ms. Jackson, I didn't know if you wanted to say anything, but this is our Hurlburt representative, so I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, Henry. And as you said, my name is Tracy Dewar. I'm the Deputy Mission Support Group Commander at the base. And I just wanted to thank the school board, thank Ms. Jackson, Henry. This really was a federal, state, and local group that got together to solve a problem. Had a series of meetings. You know, the first one a little challenging, but every meeting we stuck to it, and we committed to working together and partnering and coming to solutions, and we were able to come up with this idea for the dedicated buses. Thankfully, through a lot of footwork from Henry, we're able to get that into the budget, and we are just so appreciative of the teamwork and partnership, and we look forward to collaborations in the future. We do know that this will create also a unique requirement for additional bus drivers. Once the governor signs the bus, we're already putting out the word to our military spouses and to the thousands of retirees that are in the local area to see if any of them might volunteer to also become a bus driver. But we appreciate so much your help to help us find a solution for this military readiness issue.
Thank you so much. And I'm so
Please go ahead,
sorry,
Superintendent.
excuse me. But it really was, we kind of got off to a rocky start. We all dug our heels in. And then thanks to Senator Broxson and his phenomenal people skills, we get to have the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit out in front of our school. And, I mean, it was a win-win for everyone, and everybody put something into this. And I feel really good about it, and I feel good about our school being safe. I feel good about being able to support the mission, because we're all about those military families. And I want to thank you very much, and for all the colonels that we met out there and all of the people that worked. And I tell you, Senator Pasadomo, I met with her personally. She was the chair of the appropriations, and she was so impressed that 3 levels of government were able to solve a problem together, that she really supported us in this. So I have to give a shout out to her and her hard work. And of course to Senator Broxson and Mel Ponder. I was texting them, they were voting, they were texting back, and it's just pretty wonderful to see them do that. And thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. We look forward to more collaborations in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank
White,
you both. Yes, sir.
Can I
Mr.
say just
Bryan.
one thing?
Sure, sure.
I'd also like to point out, Henry, I want to thank you for your groundwork in getting the message out. I know Thursday or Friday, we were receiving emails, contacting our elected officials out there. So hopefully that did work. But I did want to say thank you for at least giving us that information so we could get the word out to the people to get out there and make it known that we would like that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. Board members, anybody else?
Well,
Yeah.
we have kind of a status update. I know that Hurlburt was also offering engineering services for some site work and design at Florosa to facilitate this issue, and then we'll have to budget this summer to pay for those bus drivers that hopefully, like you said, we can recruit some members, because that is a high turnover position and one that we sorely need filled. So that's a great resource that you have that I hope you can help us with.
Exactly, we will. And to give you just a short update on the project, because we wanted to, every level, everything we can do to keep traffic moving down 98, we want to explore. So we have kept going with the design for a road that will link up the parent drop-off to the red light that's right there at the school, so there won't be the 2 exits from the school anymore. We're preparing to get all that done and moving forward. Our Red Horse unit and the base construction unit that's deployed right now, a lot of them get back in April and May, and so they'll get back, then hopefully we'll be able to get money, and we would love to be able to do that this summer, so then when the next school year starts, we'll have that done. So we're pressing ahead with that as well.
Okay, and then I think, wasn't it the Department of Transportation that was also going to
Yes, ma'am.
Widen or lengthen the turn lane there?
Right, and they are still looking at that. The base, our Colonel Polinsky, our wing commander, sent a letter to the Florida Department of Transportation recently asking for that that part of Highway 98 to be determined a strategic intermodal corridor. So that will help us get more state funding up in this area for things like that, so we can extend that turn lane from Hurlburt all the way to the school, and then ultimately even help fund further improvements on Highway 98. Okay. So we're doing this from every level we can just to keep traffic moving.
Well, again, just to echo everyone's sentiments, thank you for working with us and together to make this possible.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And I just add, keep those emails and communications going towards Governor Rick Scott. We want that finalized and approved.
And on that note, Doctor, now that tomorrow I will be sending out communications to the chambers,
Very
the
good.
Navarre Chamber,
Excellent.
EDC, all of our partners that have a stake in this community.
Very good.
So,
Thank you both. Thank you very much. All right. will be quite an accomplishment. All right, so now moving to Section 8 on consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify. Votes 5-0. All right, board members, let's move on down here on this computer, and we get down to the superintendent's human resources recommendations. Item 9.1 is for information only. This would be employees on administrative leave presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the superintendent for approval.
So moved. Or I'll make a motion.
It's
This is
just
information, Mr. Bryant,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
I know it's a little odd because this is the only one in this entire section that's for information.
I'm sorry.
It's all right, that's okay.
Chairman, I made a brief request to
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chambers at the workshop
Yes, sir.
about putting a category in here, much like the ones that's in employee separations, which has an explanation. And he said he was going to look at it, and I want to give him time to come up with a solution. But if you had any thoughts on that at all, Mr. Chambers?
Thank you, Mr. Chambers, for coming forward to the microphone. We want to get it on tape.
All right. And you're referring to the, basically us looking at adding a column
Right.
that would basically say
Reason.
what the reason was.
Exactly.
And we have the ability to do that.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Thank you, Mr. Destin. All right, so 9.2, recommended a motion to approve the personnel recommendations on 9.2. Looking for a motion.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Bryant. All in favor? Votes 5-0. 9.3, employee transfers presented by Mr. Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, recommended by the Superintendent. Looking for a motion.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
I'll second it. And for clarification, that was the section that I was talking about, the transfers,
Okay.
not administrative leave. I
Yes,
think Mr. Chambers knows which one it is.
Okay,
Thanks.
all right. So 9.3, we have a motion by Mr. Walker and a second by Mr. Destin. And any discussion, further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Votes 5-0. 9.4, Deferred Retirement Option Program drop presented by Mr. Chambers, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent. Need a motion? Nope, motion.
It's
Information only.
Move it.
It's information only, apparently. Yeah, it's another one. Might be good if we could put those two together next time, but we'll have to
And
see if that's...
change where it says recommended for approval.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. All right, this is the new section that we've actually created. I guess we've had it now for maybe 2 or 3 meetings. All right, 9.5, employment separations presented by Mr. Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, recommended by the Superintendent. We're looking for a motion. Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second it.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Votes 5-0. 9.6, employee suspensions presented by Mr. Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion? All right, let's vote. All in favor? Votes 5-0. 9.7, reinstatement reimbursement of sick leave due to line of duty illness, injury, medical examination presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Votes 5-0. 9.8, leave without pay, presented by Mr. Marcus Chambers, Assistant Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
That was close.
Yeah, was it?
Give it to Mr. Destin.
All right, second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? Votes 5-0.
Chairman, this could be the appropriate place to discuss another item that's related to HR at
Okay.
the workshop.
Yes, sir.
I've asked Mr. Chambers to give us a report on a request that I had made earlier about putting a statement with our HR matters, that they had been conducted according to state law and school board policy, and he has been working on that. Ms. Smith was working on it before him, and the transition has slowed us down. Mr. Chambers, what can you tell us?
Please come forward again.
Yes, sir. So Miss Maxey and I, we've been looking at some verbiage and in essence looking at a three-step process. So when principals go or department heads go to hire an employee, there'll be a certification button that'll be there for them to click. And in essence, that certification button will say something to the effect of all school board policies, procedures, state and federal law that's within our school board policy have been followed. So that'll be the first piece. So they will not be able to continue through the process until they click that. Then secondly, it'll come to HR, and then we will certify that the principal or the department head has certified their hire. And then it'll also come, the third step would be, it'll come to the school board for the agenda. It'll be in the executive session. So you'll see that all the certifications have occurred to make sure that we're doing the hiring process in the correct way.
Thanks.
Now,
Mr. Chambers.
executive session or executive
Well,
content?
Not session.
Okay, that's okay. That's all right. Want to make sure we get that clear for
Mr.
the
Chambers, we've
association.
had that form for a long time, correct?
We've had the process in place, but didn't necessarily have the button to certify.
So we're just adding a button to what we already
Right.
have in there.
Just a review by maybe another layer.
So when we say we're adding a button, just in our digital system where we're keeping track of employee hires and things like that, it's a field that we're adding to check.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mr.
All
Chambers.
right. Yes, sir.
All right, board members, let's go on down to section 10. There were no items moved from consent, so 10.2. Fort Walton Beach High School Riggs Stadium turf replacement presented by Mr. Steve Bolton, Director of Facilities and Planning and Maintenance, and recommended by the superintendent for approval.
Move it.
I'll second it.
All right, fellas, so let's, Mr. Attorney, we talked about this a little bit.
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Scallon, you've assisted some in terms of the motion that we talked about that we would need, and so we're gonna need an identification of which particular
I'll
surface.
talk to
Can I-
Mr.
may I outline
Turner, would you
those?
indicate all that needs to be in my motion?
My understanding
good.
from the workshop on Thursday was that the board was inclined tonight to consider the replacement of the current artificial turf with artificial turf. If that is your desire, then this motion would be.
Mr. Walker, is that your motion?
Yes, and
All right.
I've got with him and make
Yes, sir.
sure we include everything.
Okay, so
Okay.
the motion would be to approve the replacement of the existing artificial turf on the field at Riggs Stadium at Fort Walton Beach High School with new artificial turf through the company Field Turf per that company's NJPA contract pricing for option 1A at a cost of $407,474.30 to be funded out of capital outlay project contingency funds.
Okay, that's my motion, Mr.
All right.
Chairman.
So I got a motion by Mr. Walker, and so we've got a second by Mr. Destin. So we're open to discussion.
I
Any
think
discussion?
my biggest thing is with the public hearing this, I just want to make sure that we do have a plan in place, so in 10 years, we're not in the same boat. I mean, this is a tough decision tonight, but
And Mr. Bryant, yes, what I talked to the attorney about that, and what we decided to do is go ahead and pass this tonight and then get back with the superintendent, we'll get with her staff and clarify everything, and then we'll more or less, I felt like it'd be neater and better to separate it. But we'll get back to cover what you're concerned
Okay.
about, the other board members. That will give all of you a chance to have input,
thank you, Mr. Walker.
okay?
Well, I mean, I have some concerns about approving spending $407,000 and not having a plan. You know, and I agree with Mr. Bryant, and I laid out my concerns, and they're valid concerns. But I also recognize, and why this decision is so difficult, that our stadiums are more than just a football field. It is more than Friday night football. They're part of our school community. We have our physical education classes in our stadiums. They're where dance teams, like we recognize tonight, perform, cheerleaders, bands, graduation ceremonies, community members use them on the weekends. so it's really a difficult decision because, like I stated at the workshop, we have severe capital needs in this county. And knowing that we daily have water dripping on employees and students in our schools and administrative buildings, and currently have an administrative building closed and people working in hallways, it's really difficult. And the problem to me with the proposal, and I so appreciate all the effort that Fort Walton and Mr. Spolsky and staff and community members have put together as far as figuring out a way to alleviate this funding issue, is that we do everything differently. Unfortunately, we're not consistent with our internal funds and ticket prices for various sports, what we do with that internal revenue, how we distribute it among each entity at the schools. And as I stated Thursday, we really can't penalize, say, a Bruner or a Pryor because they're not like Meg's and don't have a football field at their school. I'll be honest, it really bothers me that Liza Jackson School can use our facilities, and they are, you know, comparatively compared to the district, are taking our capital funds away. In 6 years, 3 of those 6 years we received nothing in PICO funds, and one charter school in this county received $1.8 million of PICO funds, and this school district that has over 40 facilities received $2.2 million. That's criminal. But that's what the legislators that we all vote for in this room are doing to public education funding. So I would like to propose an amendment to Mr. Walker's motion. Annually, we set aside currently, and since I've been on the board, $75,000 to each of us out of our capital budget for capital board discretionary funds. I am proposing, and this has been done in the past, prior to my tenure on the board, that capital discretionary funding per board member has fluctuated. It's been as high as $125,000 per board member, and as low as $50,000, I believe. And I would propose that we reduce our capital discretionary dollars per board member from 75 to 25, or from 75 to 50,000, and place $125,000 annually in a separate funding source for all of our stadium facilities to use, because again, they're part of our physical plants. They're part of our school facilities. We are having instruction take place in those facilities, and we need to maintain those facilities, not just the turf, but the stadiums. We had issues with bleacher seats last year at Choctaw, and we can't always rely on contingency funds. Contingency funds are when we have 3 air conditioners break down the first week of school in August, which has happened. Contingency funds are for contingencies, and we need to, with the minimal resources we have, set aside funds. So I would propose that to amend the motion to reduce our capital discretionary board members' funds to $50,000 each, and annually budget $25,000. And of course, we would do that at our budget hearings slated for this summer for the upcoming school year. So I'm not affecting any distributions that have already been distributed for the 2017-2018 year.
All right, so
I deny the motion.
All right, so procedurally, Mr. McInnes, we have an amendment to the motion.
I deny the amendment.
Mr. Walker is contending that he's denying the amendment.
Well, that would simply mean that he's not accepting it as a friendly amendment, but if she's moving to amend, she would need to get a second.
That's right.
And then you would vote on the amendment, and then you would come back and vote on the main motion as amended if the amendment passes.
Or If there's not a second, then certainly the board member could bring that forward as a separate motion following this motion itself.
That's correct.
Okay. So I think I understood your motion, Mrs. Thrush. So board members, I guess before we discuss it, we're looking for a second. Seeing no seconds, the proposed amendment dies for lack of a second. All right. So any further discussion then on the main motion by Mr. Walker?
I would just like to say that this appears that you received 2 recommendations from me. One to replace it with grass and one here, and then the board would make the decision. But this reads like I recommended the turf to you, and I just want to be real clear on that I felt that this was such a huge expenditure and a lot of money that we really don't have, that I wanted to make sure that you knew what your options were.
I made real sure that we didn't have to have your recommendation.
Yes, sir.
I felt like I wanted to put you in that point. This is strictly a board decision.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And we talked briefly about that Thursday, and it's certainly on the video that my thoughts were is that
Exactly.
you put them both on the table,
Right.
so they must both be viable.
There you
So
go.
thereby the board would have to make the decision. If they weren't viable, you wouldn't have put them on the table.
There you go.
Okay, so any further discussion? Got a motion and a second. Seeing or hearing no discussion, then let's vote. All in favor? Vote is 5-0.
Chairman,
All right.
let me ask one brief question.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Thrush also discussed, and I supported asking the superintendent to look at a district-wide solution to try to raise some more funds for these sports facilities, whether it be a surcharge on the tickets or whatever good solutions they could come up with. And I would certainly appreciate if you had some ideas at some future board meeting to bring them back to us so we can consider them.
I'll do my best.
I know it won't be an easy task.
I'll do my best.
All right.
You know, this is a lot of money, and
It
and for this to be at one facility, we've got some folks that are not as happy about this. So
We all need to remember, as I said in the last workshop meeting, all of our sports and all of our extracurricular activities plays a very important part in educating our children. And I always believe that, and I think we should never lose sight of that.
I would just like to add to Mr. Destin's comments, and again, I'm all for coming up with ideas. The concern is we have different sports that charge different ticket prices. We have different fees associated with participating in different extracurricular activities, not just sports, at all of our schools. We have no standardization as far as extracurricular activities fees. So if I have children at a school in the Central Zone, I might have to pay for my child to be on a dance team, to be on a sports team. But if I have a child that attends a different school, I might also have to pay fees, but they might be a different amount of fees because we charge different ticket prices for different sports, and different sports utilize the field. So for example, soccer in Niceville doesn't use the football field in Niceville, but it does at Choctaw. It does at Fort Walton. Do you charge, assess only those teams who use that field? But then you have teams that visit and play on that field. It gets complicated. I mean, and I think that we need to address that inconsistency, and I don't see how we could consider assessing fees or assessing ticket prices unless we address that consistency first, because otherwise, again, you would be potentially penalizing, if you only pay $4 to go to a soccer game and you pay $6 to go to a football game, but you take $1 from each of them. Well, you're taking 1/4 versus 1/6, you know.
I see your point in that, I really do. Let us look at, I need to see what everyone charges, because it is different at every school. But Mr. Kutsaritis will help me with that, and we will see if we can come up with a way to make it as equitable as possible.
Well, and you know, we're living in a different world, but even Miss Thrush back when, wasn't you in the band at Choctaw High School?
No, sir, I was in chorus.
Oh, okay, of course.
But that was back in the day when you didn't have to pay for your music.
That even 15, 18, 20 years ago, we raised $600,000 for a band to go to the Rose Bowl. Another time, I know the Macy Parade, we raised $500,000 to go to Macy Parade. And nowadays, we call them cheerleaders still, I guess. But to be a cheerleader at a school, you go to 3 or 4 camps a year, and I mean, I sympathize with you, Miss Jackson, because I can tell you, there's no simple answer, and no way we're ever going to be able to set up some type of fee schedule, because the world we're living in now. And for instance, if Choctaw High School tomorrow decides they want their band to participate in the Rose Bowl, these parents and their kids, they'll get out there, and used to it, they sold donuts. And when I tell you that every Saturday for 3 years in a row, they knocked on your door and you bought donuts to fund that trip to the Rose Bowl. And it's just like tomorrow, if Crestview's band decides they want to go to Canada, they'll raise the money. And I don't know how there's no way to equalize it, but I can tell you this, I sure will not ever be a part. Unfortunately, I won't be on the board much longer. But if any of y'all ever figure out a way to stop a band from deciding if they want to go to Europe, good luck, because in the years I've been here, ladies and gentlemen, there's been millions of dollars raised for these kids to make those kind of trips, and it's on continue. And if any of y'all can ever figure out a way that you think you're going to come up with a simple fee plan on activities, hey, it probably costs to be a cheerleader at one of our senior high schools now. It's no telling what it costs.
But
unfortunately, just let me finish.
Sure,
Ms.
I'm
Rush,
sorry.
and then you can have your say. But unfortunately, there's not any way that, and I'll say this about the schools, they do a wonderful job, because if it happens to be a kid that's a cheerleader that can't afford to go to certain camps, certain things, that's always taken care of by the schools, and that's the way it should be. It's like the band. If there's kids that cannot afford to come with their portion of what it costs to go to the Rose Bowl, they always have accommodations to make sure all the kids can go. And that's the American way. But now, good luck, folks, if you think that we won't be able, or Miss Jackson and her staff can come up with some solution to figure out if Niceville charges $1 more at a football game than Choctawhatchee. It can't be solved, or at least let me say this, in my 40-something years connected with this school district, I've had a lot of people try it, and I can remember one superintendent many years ago saying one thing: hey, if the band decides they want to go to Europe, get out of their way. If they want to go to the moon, get out of their way. And all I can tell you is several times through my years, we used to try to tell them no, and that didn't last very long.
I heard it referred to as the 3 Bs.
Exactly, exactly. But anyway, that's my thing, and I feel sorry for you, Mr. Jack. But hey, if you can come up with a solution, you will be done something that many other superintendents you use not been able to do.
See, I have Steve Horton.
Right.
He'll figure that out.
I would just add, though, that going on a once every 4-year band trip and fundraising for specific purpose is different than planning to maintain and renovate a facility that is used by multiple entities. And other school districts do have standardized rules for fees, and I'm talking about just participating. I'm not talking about traveling on special events, whether it's a football team traveling to, you know, play an out-of-state game, or the band or chorus traveling to perform somewhere. I'm just talking about participation fees, and we are very diverse from sport to sport, from school to school for participation fees. I have 4 kids in school. I'm well aware of the differences among schools, among extracurricular activities, not just sports, but other entities. And we have no standards.
But I feel like, truthfully, like I know each high school that I'm still aware of handle their internal funds different ways. But for instance, we'll use vending machine money. Well, I know some schools that will give all their vending machine money maybe to the girls' softball team. And I feel like Miss Jackson, it would be your job, but I mean, I think that there's always been a lot of discretion to where they let the principals in that school decide how they take certain type of funds that they do have discretion to do. And I mean, personally, I think that when you get to trying to actually say, well, all of them are going to do the same thing with their same money, I'm not sure that we need to get into it, because Choctawhatchee may have a completely different way that they try to fund their minor sports or minor extracurricular activities than Niceville. It all depends, and I think that's something that should, like it's always been, handled by the principal and their internal staff. And naturally, if the superintendent wishes to change that, she can, and that you can equalize it. But I mean, personally, I'm not so sure that about trying to tell Crestview to do all theirs just like Niceville does, etc. I just know that, to me, certain schools have different ways that they like to try to fund their extracurricular activities.
And I understand the points made by both parties here, and of course, and we all know the truth. In this particular situation, you know, we were handed what amounts to a cost that occurred when that facility was actually built, 10 years, 11 years down the road. And I do think that I'm hopeful that, following upon Mr. Destin's recommendation and what Mrs. Thrush is saying, that this board come up with some kind of mechanism so that in 10 years or 11 years from now, it won't be the kind of matter that we're facing now, where we have to kind of reach into an emergency situation to make things right. And in fact, it may be that the recommendation you bring forward, Superintendent, might be that you might ask board members for a reduction in that capital outlay amount of money to help pay for the cost associated with what we know in 10, or whatever the warranty is on this surface will be, 10, 11, 12 years or sooner.
But it's not just Fort Walton Beaches field. Sure, their turf replacement is a larger, longer term payment, but we have grass turf replacement.
Well, Mrs. Thrush, you know that I've had direct experience with that, because I have had my own football field.
Right.
But thanks for the information. But what I'm saying is that let's come up with a plan that, in this particular case, this not happen to our predecessors in 10, 11, 12 years down the road.
Mr. Chairman, if you want to go back and look at the record, it's almost 11 years ago, I strongly opposed doing turf for the very reason we're here tonight.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But unfortunately, and you know, I trust everybody, and we actually had documents or swore that there would be funds set aside and it would be there when this day came. But that didn't happen, and that's the reason that I pointed out, as you just mentioned, hopefully we'll come up with a
That's right.
plan.
That's what you're asking for.
That's exactly
Right.
right, but I felt like we needed to separate the two so that Ms. Jackson and this board can then figure out a way that will fund it. And then, as we mentioned, and when we talked to Mr. Sposki at the workshop, then anything that him and his people will be able to come up with can be added in to whatever this board and the superintendent decide to do. And if over the years, whether he's there or whoever, whatever funds that they come up with, then Ms. Skagit would set up a program that this money would go in there, and then like you said, Lamar, hopefully in 10 years from now, then hopefully we won't face this again. Even though, you know, sometimes when you're leaving a situation like me, you don't worry about it. But unfortunately,
In Washington, they call it kicking the can down the road.
And I know Mr. Bryant's expressed here tonight and other times about hopefully we can come up with a good, solid plan.
That's right. I agree.
That will do that.
All right, so unless there are any further items of discussion on this particular one, or if there are any other motions, we need to go ahead and move on.
Just one item
Yes,
of
sir.
information. I did have a call today from Mr. Steve Riggs, who, as you know, on Thursday
All
was
right.
announced that he
Very
had
good.
offered to make a donation to assist in offsetting this cost, and he just wanted to, he could not be here tonight, but he wanted to reconfirm to the board that he has made that commitment to donate $50,000 over a 25-month period. And Ms. Scallon and I, with superintendent's permission, are going to work with him on the correct way to get those payments in and then put the money back into the correct account.
All right. And in the workshop, I think we talked about the previous donations that Mr. Riggs has made, and they've been substantial, as this one is too. All right, thank you, Mr. McInnes. All right, board members, let's go ahead and move down to section 11, construction program owners representatives business. 11.1, program status report by the board's representative, Mr. Walker.
It's nothing tonight.
All right. All right, 11.2, certification of the Okaloosa County School District Facilities FISH data for 2018, presented by Mr. Steve Bolton, Director of Facilities Planning and Maintenance, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. Looking for a motion.
Move it.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Vote is 5-0. 11.3, program number 5, task order number 20, GMP for Eglin Elementary School Building and Roofing Replacement Project, presented by Mr. Bolton, Director of Facilities Planning and Maintenance, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. Looking for a motion. Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, let's vote. Vote is 5-0. All right, technology, section 12, there's no business there. Item 13, Mr. Attorney, your business, sir.
One item, Mr. Chairman, I provided for each board member and the superintendent a draft of a construction agreement we've been working on with the company Sure Enough Agriculture and Repair and the Okaloosa Public Schools Foundation. This is for the greenhouse project over at Silver Sand School that the Impact 100 group has granted to the foundation.
This is what you've distributed?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Just so you can see the concept of the contract, we've got a couple of changes to make in talking to the contractor, but what I needed to ask the board tonight, because you don't meet for another month, we've included the board in joining this contract only for the purpose of authorizing the construction on your campus. You will be insured under this contract, and we are requiring a payment and performance bond to avoid any liens on the property over there, so you'll be the beneficiary of that as well. But tonight, if you would consider authorizing the chairman to sign off on this once the final contract's in form for the purpose of allowing construction on that campus.
So you need a motion?
Yes, sir.
Motion by Mr. Walker.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bryant. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Vote is 5-0.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. All right, Madam Superintendent, you've got some out-of-state field trips, but item 14.2 is anything else that you'd like to bring forward?
Just something I wanted to make the board aware of. As you know, our substitute buses, we only have about 4 or 5. They're 22 plus years old. Our neighbors over in Escambia County replace their buses every 12 years. And they will be auctioning off, selling their 12-year-old buses. And I called the superintendent over there and I said, we would really be interested. I talked with Jay, I talked with everyone, and I said, we're desperately in need of some buses that will actually make it up and down the road each day. And the superintendent over there said, why would you want these buses? They're 12 years old. And I said, Malcolm, some of our buses are 22, 24, 25 years old. We understand that we might get a very, very good price on those buses. The mechanics and Jay McGinnis are going to go over, look at it, see if there's anything there we can use, because we're down to the point where it's getting a little scary if one of those sub buses is not able to run. So I'll be coming back to you with more information about that in probably the next, we'll meet in April. Hopefully we'll have at least some information for you to look at and help me make a decision about whether it would be in the best interest of the district to buy that. That's all I have.
Right. Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you.
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman,
yes,
if I
ma'am. Sure,
would that include minibuses? Because I
Yes.
know our special needs buses
Yes.
we're down to, I believe, 1 spare bus.
Yes,
if I'm
they
not-
are replacing 37 buses.
Okay.
And they do it cyclically. Every 12 years, they put their older buses, buses out. Not every 12 years. In a cycle of 12 years, they replace their buses. And so they would be like little baby buses compared to our ancient buses, and probably safer. A lot of them do have air conditioning and seat belts. So we're gonna send Jay and the mechanics over to look at them to see if they're in good enough shape. And the superintendent there was very amenable to working with our district first before they did anything else.
And Escambia County has had and has voted for a half-cent sales tax for 30 years, since 1998. And a new bus costs approximately $110,000 each.
Yes, yes.
Well, thank you, Ms. Thrush. All right, so we're in section 15, board members' announcements, and Mr. Bryant, I'll start with you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. White. Just real quick, this morning I had the opportunity to shadow with one of our employees behind the scenes. We talk about teachers, we talk about custodial staff and bus drivers, everybody that's in the view of the public, but we do have a lot of people who are behind the scenes, and I had the opportunity today to spend the whole day with Steve Woods, who's one of our couriers, and we had a great time, and it was really interesting to see what his job consisted of. But I will say that one thing I asked Mr. Woods about his job, what he enjoyed most, he told me that he enjoyed going into schools or into administrative offices and putting a smile on people's faces and being able to deliver the mail in a timely manner. And to me that epitomizes basically all of our employees in our school district, that they come in and they do their job 100% and and do it with a smile on their face. So I talked to Eric Mitchell before we came here today and told him how much I really appreciate the opportunity to ride with Steve today. So.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Ms. Thrush?
Well, since our Fort Walton Beach High School cohort is still here, wanted to give a shout out to them and their Project Lead the Way program. It's just one of 133 high schools in the United States to receive the award. And again, I know April and a group of community members and the superintendent were recently at Fort Walton Beach High School to tout the great work and great program that is only available at Fort Walton Beach High School. So kudos to the staff and the students for making that program so successful. I also wanted to thank Cindy Gates and Emery Riddle and our partners at Career Source, the Economic Development Council. They had set up the Educate the Educator program for some of our students and staff up in the North End. It was a phenomenal program, and students and staff got to tour certified manufacturing over in Holt and L3 Aerospace over up by the Bob Sykes Airport, and a great experience for our students up in the North End to see an application of their academic work being applied, welding programs, aircraft maintenance, a lot of neat parts being made up at those locations. So thank you to the staff who helped coordinate that. And then April Branscombe is here. Wanted to thank her for her coordinated efforts of setting up the inaugural Career Technical Education Council. And again, thank you to your efforts to create this advisory council, which includes different business and industry partners, as well as a collaborative effort with our educational partners at UWF and Northwest Florida State College. Again, trying to give more and more opportunities to our students and make that connection with our local industry so that we can directly place students from high school into great careers here in our county. So thank you for your efforts. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Thrush. All right, Mr. Destin.
Chairman, I did have a request for information that I've been working with April Branson on this afternoon, and I wanted to bring it to the board to see if we can find some resolution. Okay. It appears that there's a robotics competition in Huntsville on Wednesday. We have a team from Niceville going, I believe, and there's a bus charter somehow, and I'm not sure exactly where the glitches were, and April was looking into it for me. The Choctawhatchee team was not slated to go, or is supposed to go, and don't have the clearance. And so I would ask April to explain what happened, and is there any way we can fix it in this short term?
Now, is April here, Superintendent? Mm-hmm. Okay, so you want to come forward, Ms. Branson? Is that all right, Superintendent?
Absolutely, and be very candid.
Back on January 3rd, we received an email from Mr. McSheehy with a couple of attachments to a field trip request and also a TDE. And the field trip request was not signed by the principal. The teacher signed it, but it wasn't signed by the principal. And so neither was the TDE. It was not signed, and it wasn't completed by anybody. There was no funding strip. It was incorrectly completed, but also the funding strip wasn't on there, and there was no signature by the teacher, the administrator. We were asked, Mr. McSheehy has been working with Ben Schumann, our robotics and engineering and manufacturing specialist, to assist them with the program, and we have been working with Choctawhatchee High School's robotics program. Mr. Schumann received a $25,000 AT&T grant, and he covered the cost of $2,000 of a fee, of the $5,000 registration fee, so he paid for that. He also is covering the cost of 2 rooms, hotel rooms for the mentors. Those Choctawhatchee students are riding with Niceville High School on their bus, so he's covering the cost of that. But there has to be a fee, you know, I think there's 4 or 5 kids going, and so that was the fee that Mr. McSheehy was going to have to cover the cost of the hotel rooms for those students.
And how much was that going to be?
I don't know the exact cost of that. I know last year we covered the cost out of CAPE, which I really didn't feel that this was a CAPE funded activity because it is an after-school robotics team, and the program that earned it is engineering, but it's not. There was no curriculum in that day. They were not teaching the robotics piece at the time. So last year we funded almost $10,000 of this trip, and at the last minute they decided not to go.
Well,
so
let me, as Mr. Destin asked, the main thing, to cut the chase of the matter, is there any way that we can fix it for them to be able to go?
Well,
Yes or no? Can this board and the superintendent fix it or not fix it? Yes or no?
yes,
He doesn't
if-
have the money.
Huh?
if they
He
have
doesn't have the money.
Well, okay, so what we're getting to, is there any funds that you can have, or any way that's successful, that this board, if 3 members wants to be able, for them to allow to go, can it be fixed?
If,
Well, I have a question, Mr. Walker, and I don't mean to step
That's
on
all right.
what you're
That's
asking,
all right.
but I guess my question is relative to the procedures that are in place for field trips or whatever the case may be, TDE, et cetera, et cetera. And did I hear you say the principal had not signed off on this particular request?
well, we don't have copies of any of the signatures.
I spoke to him today, and he had not. I called him just before this meeting to make sure that something hadn't transpired since
Well,
that, and he said no, he had not signed it.
You know, we assist with CAPE funding, but this is kind of out of our wheelhouse. This is between the teacher and the school when it comes to this piece of it, with the field trip being approved by the principal of the school and then being brought before the school board. I don't know if Mr. McSheehy felt like that was our responsibility, but we've never done that before. And I know he's requested these
Did the other
items before.
TDE have the principal's signature?
No, sir, it did not. Which, I mean, I have it right here, and we sent it back, my office manager sent it back stating that we can't do anything without signatures.
Let me ask a question. If the funds were available, and if the principal did want the robotics team to be able to go, can we do that?
I don't, if they have the funds, I mean, that's completely up to,
Mr. McSheehy, I talked to him later in the day, and he seemed to think that he had a source for the funds.
And if I can interject, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman,
sure.
I guess the issue I have is similar to issue when we have community members who go, start through the proper channels, going through, whether it's a coach, an instructor, a principal, the superintendent staff, and then the superintendent, and, aren't getting the answer that they want to hear. And so their issue is presented for the board, and the assumption is, well, as long as you can get 3 votes, you can get it. And I'm a supporter of the robotics program. I know Mr. McSheehy has done a great job at Choctaw and after hours and on weekends with both robotics and drones. So not just what he does in the classroom outside, but we have procedures and processes for a reason. And I think it's a slippery slope if any time an individual or entity has followed those procedures or hasn't followed the procedures and it didn't work out how they would like it to just come to the board the week of, needing funds and asking 3 board members to approve funding. I certainly don't think that that's how we should follow and set a precedence.
Did you indicate that 3 board members was on vote to pay for that?
No, and the real question, while I understand your analysis, it appears that there was some kind of a drop into the ball. Mr. McSheehy thought he did what he was supposed to do. April and her gang thought they did what they were supposed to do, but somehow the trip didn't get scheduled.
And I'm just saying I don't think this is the forum for that to play out in.
Well, it isn't
but
the
that's
forum,
just my,
except the fact that the Choctawhatchee robotics team won't get to go.
The principal
And
shared
it
with me.
principally won't be their mistake. It'll be the people over them, which
The
is.
principal shared with me that he brought the form to him, and he told him that if it did not have a funding strip on it, he would not sign it. So he gave it back to Mr. McSheehy at that point. And that's all I know from today. That's everything I know.
At this point, the only people that are going to suffer are the students, and that gives me. Okay, Mr. McSheehy.
He said he didn't. He said he
says
did
he has
not.
the funds.
and again,
Mr. McSheehy,
I just feel like this is something that the superintendent needs to to deal with. If the board, if no one on the board is requesting that board members vote to expend funding, then to me, this is not an issue that the board has authority over. This is a decision for the superintendent to approve a field trip request and not the board.
All right, let's do it this way. This matter came up under board members' business, under Mr. Destin. And Mr. Destin has made an inquiry, and I think you might have prefaced your remarks as an information request.
It was this afternoon, and trying to find out how the ball was dropped.
All right, and so,
Can I say something? I don't think my office dropped the ball, just so you know.
And I'm not blaming you, April. I just, somehow, things didn't quite come together.
well,
Well, the main thing is what you just said, Mr. Destin. I'm not concerned about Mr. Sheehy or April, anyway. What I'm concerned about is the kids. And I know this, you didn't drop the ball because I know how efficient and a good job you do. On the other hand, I also know what a good instructor Mr. Sheehy is. But that doesn't play anything. The thing Mr. Destin just said is if kids have looked forward and worked to go to something like this, I just want to make sure they're not the ones punished.
I also need to know, has everything been turned in? Has the robot been submitted?
A robot, they have to, I think it was the 23rd of February, they have to seal it as, like at midnight.
And send it in?
And send it and sign it in, but it's parts.
It's not put together.
Mr. Schumann told me that there was no robot that they were submitting, it was just parts that they had to send back.
Okay.
Now, whether they go and put anything together, I can't speak to that because I don't know.
I'll be
All right.
glad to
well,
deal
that's
with
what I was
this.
going to propose, and certainly see if Mr. Destin, under his business, would concur with this, that superintendent, you and your staff, look into this matter, consult with Mr. McSheehy, consult with Ms. Branscombe, and see if the TDE has been signed, and if the funding strip is there, and if all the various protocols have been met in order to participate, if it's possible then for these kids to go, is how I see it. And Mr. Destin, certainly, please respond.
The goal is to let the kids go, if possible, unless there are some rules that are absolutely set in concrete that we can't deal with. And time is of the essence.
Yes, it's Wednesday.
It
And we
is.
just heard about this afternoon.
And so I know, Superintendent, if you're in concurrence with my proposal, if Mr. Destin is in, you would get right on this first thing in the morning to
Yes.
see if this could occur.
Mr. McSheehy, just out of curiosity, you say you have a funding source?
Yes, sir. We have the funding to pay the balance. There was a lot of discussion on what was going to be paid. So Ben Schumann said that we could use the funding strip to pay for 2 of the rooms, and we have the cost of the other 2 rooms secured as well. The request was submitted on January 3rd. Usually we just send a hard copy through, but I've learned to send a digital copy, which was without question sent, that everybody had.
I have that, and it was not signed.
Because that's when I sent it out, the hard copy came, and Dr. Hale signed the strip, and then it got
I don't
stopped
have
at
that.
your office.
I don't have that, and he said he didn't.
All right.
Mr. McSheehy,
Let me
We
deal
can,
with this.
verify that very easily, Superintendent.
Yes, we can.
But I'll be candid as well. I think Plan A was to cancel the trip today. Is that correct?
I didn't know about it until 3:30 this
Ms.
afternoon.
Branscombe, was Plan A to cancel the trip?
I'm not.
Has that discussion come up?
No, that discussion hasn't come up. This
was
is the
never
first
spoke
I
of.
heard about this today, too.
All right, well, here's where I'm at with this. And what the sensibility I'm gathering, at least from one portion of the table, is that we want the kids to be able to go if it's possible. Okay,
Absolutely.
if it's
We'll see.
possible. I know. If it's possible, and that's the concurrence. So, Madam Superintendent, if you would look into this
I will.
and see if we can make that happen, I think that's the way to resolve this rather than doing a Q&A. Okay?
One other question, the cost on the rooms? You said you had
Approximately $160 for the rooms, because they hold 6 students. And that's,
What's the
we
total?
would take another route, but because the arena is right there.
Total for the whole trip for the rooms?
So roughly $700 per block of rooms times 4 block of rooms. 2 have been accounted for and promised by Mr. Schuman, and I have the others accountable for, and I'll provide the funding source for those.
Where did the
as well.
$3,000 figure come from?
The two,
The $3,000 figure, that's what I was told at 3:30 this afternoon.
well,
Well, that's gonna all be something that
Yeah.
There's a lot of
y'all
information
you gotta
from
work
so
out
far.
in the morning, okay?
And I was gonna volunteer, if
All right.
$700 for the rooms, I'll write you a check for that.
Thank you, Mr. Dustin, I appreciate it.
Okay. All right,
That's
all
the
right.
issue.
All right, Mr. Walker, it's your turn. I hope you don't have any lengthy business stuff.
Simpler one than
I
that.
had about a 30-minute speech. but
Well,
I'll-
go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, well, I've got a couple of items. One of them I'm required to do. So let me read this for the record. In regard to the Peggy Gorte Bruner Award, I would like to confirm with the board members, all the board members, that your ballots have been submitted to the school board secretary so that that award can be given. I do have a couple of announcements regarding the high school that's in my district, and that pertains to Choctawhatchee High School. First of all, to Choctawhatchee's volleyball coach, Scott Allen. He's had a great year. First of all, he's had a son born. And his Choctaw girls volleyball team won their first state title. And now for the 3rd straight year, Coach Allen has captured the Daily News Large School Volleyball Coach of the Year honor. Congratulations to Coach Allen. Choctaw's MVP and LSU-bound player, Melinda Linder, is the Daily News Large Schools Volleyball Player of the Year. And also congratulations to Coach Don Brown and the Choctawhatchee Lady Indians basketball team for their 2nd place finish in the 7A state championships. And most recently, congratulations to Choctaw coach Andy Thigpen's boys basketball team for their runner-up finish in the state 7A championships. Congratulations to Coach Thigpen and to the Choctawhatchee Indian boys basketball team. All right, so that concludes my board members' business. Is there any business from staff? I see you shaking your head no. Okay. How about from the association? No, sir. Any other business, board members?
Mr. Chairman, I just
ma'am.
forgot to mention that the middle school bands had their music performance assessment. We had 11 out of 28 bands in District 1 perform. And we had 2 schools that had 2 bands, both Ruckel and Bruner. And 1, 2, 3, 4, we had 5 of those 11 bands earn straight superiors. And again, that's just something that doesn't happen in other school districts, for us to have 5 different middle school bands earn straight superiors, and all of our middle school bands participate is just a phenomenal kudos to our music instructors and our band instructors.
All right, Superintendent?
Nope.
Lawyer, any more business? This meeting's over.
Be careful going on.
Sir?